Guys, I titled today's video that the life that you often think you want is not always the life that you end up having, because that was my experience as someone who navigated a 360 pivot in my mid to late 30s. Today, I wanted to take a moment to share my story because I feel, especially now, a lot of people are navigating a lot of change in their lives, but also I learned so much from my own experience how much sometimes we have very set vision of our lives, very conditioned vision, but most often that is not the life that we're meant to live. And I can say that from someone who is quote unquote on the other side. I know now why my whole life basically needed to have a redo in my mid 30s. So when I was 35 years old, my whole life started to fall apart. I had been building my career 12 years. I was in a long-term relationship. I thought I'm going to marry that person, have kids with that person. I was living in London back then, and I've been building that life for about 7 years, and I thought that's going to be my forever place. And then suddenly things just started to slowly fall apart, and I started to be challenged in every single aspect of my life. And I started to also realize that a lot of the life that I built for myself wasn't the life that I was meant to have anymore. I started to really notice how I've outgrown a lot of these aspects of my life. But I had so much fear around change, and there was a huge side of myself, part of myself, that was really holding on to the old version of myself. I really just didn't want to let go of the idea that I had about the life that I thought I wanted to have. And I think this is often the hardest part around change, is we have such a set view of how life is meant to unfold. And especially I think that age is quite challenging because I think society, we're so conditioned to have a certain kind of life and tick certain kind of boxes, get married, have a career, have business, or have kids, all these different things. And when your life starts to fall apart that specific age, when everyone is really ticking those boxes, I think that experience is even more isolating and confusing, because you thought your life is going to look in a certain way. And in my mind, I just thought that I had a vision the rest of my life and I was set in stone. And when that vision starts to fall apart, there was a huge amount of time that I needed to grieve the loss of my old identity. And I also just needed to almost to get to know myself when I was 35 years old. So everything started to fall apart, and I decided to, and life kind of pushed me, I don't know, just to get to a place in my life where I was able to take a little bit of time for myself. So I decided to make a quite big leap and sell everything that I had, leave London, pause my career, and my relationship ended. And I went traveling for a long time because I just wanted to understand, how can I find these tools and how can I find this information for myself, and this clarity and awareness, what actually is going to make me happy, how my life is actually meant to look like. Because when your life starts to fall apart, and especially in that age, you feel so lost, because suddenly the vision you've been building doesn't exist anymore. So that's often the most scariest part, because you don't, not suddenly nothing to lean on. And in my case, I didn't have anyone around me who was going through the same thing. So it was very isolating. I was very lonely. And I'm very lucky that I was able to find a lot of these different tools and practices and teachers and coaches that helped me to navigate my journey a lot. And I also found a lot of information about the different stages of change, which I didn't even know existed. All of this information that then helped me to a little bit understand the path I was in. But it did took me 5 years to have clarity. And this is what I learned is by the age of 35 years old, we are so hardwired and conditioned to live a certain type of a life. And we don't often ask ourselves these big questions. Who am I? What do I like? What environment makes me happy? And I noticed when I was 35 years old, I had not asked myself those questions. I had to build my life based on what I thought I wanted. And when that conditioning starts to fall apart, you start to really realize, and I started to really realize that a lot of the environment that I was in wasn't making me happy. The relationship wasn't making me happy anymore. My career wasn't helping me anymore. But I think the realization and the phase when you have to let go of that is very scary because you don't know what is on the other side. But for me, I think what helped so much is that I created the space for myself. And I know not everyone is able to do it, but even taking 5-10 minutes of your time every single day, of starting to ask yourself these bigger questions. Who am I? What do I want? What makes me excited? What kind of environment makes me thrive? And that process of self-discovery really helped me to start to realize that there was actually a reason why everything was falling apart in my life. And that reason was the fact that I have built my life based on who I thought I wanted to be versus who I was meant to be. And when I started to allow everything, well, I surrendered. And I know people talk a lot about surrendering, but I just allowed myself to let go. And this is how I feel surrendering really is. Just let go of that vision that you thought is going to make you happy, and allow yourself to be in this quote unquote void where nothing really makes sense, and drop every single expectation that you have about your life and allow yourself to just to be guided by the universe, the environment. Because what I noticed when I started to get out of my own way, I started to receive a lot more synchronicities and clarity, and the universe was kind of nudging me. It's okay, go that way, and maybe that person, and do this. So, but the first thing, I needed to get out of my own way. But what I also learned is the fact that these transformational journeys, especially later in life, they do take a lot of time. And I feel often people feel stuck. And I felt like 2-3 years, I probably was like, I just felt I was so stuck. Nothing was shifting, nothing was happening. I was in this weird in-between stage where I had little bit already clarity who I was becoming, and I've let go a lot of my old identity and my old life. But I was in this like middle stage, and it was very strange for me for a very long time because I'm such a control freak. I've always had a plan for life. I've always had goals, and I've always achieved my goals. But first time in my life, in my late 30s, I was in this place where I was so stuck and so frustrated. And many times in my own journey, I felt like such a failure because nothing was shifting, nothing was happening. I kept hitting a wall. And then suddenly, through a lot of pain, a lot of setbacks, a lot of failures, and during like my worst, I would say my first like worst years, I did lose everything. And the biggest moment was when my mom suddenly died. And I was just asking myself, it's like how much pain one person needs to go through. Because at that point I've let go of my financial security, my career, a lot of my relationships, my home. And then the biggest support system that I had in my life, my mom, getting emotional, passed away. And I wanted to share my story today because I listened to a lot of people's stories in my own journey, and it helped me to understand I wasn't alone, but it also helped me to really anchor myself into the knowing that things were falling apart for a reason. I couldn't see it in that moment, but I just needed to trust the fact that whatever is happening is somehow guiding me towards the person I'm meant to come and towards the purpose that I have in my life. And now I'm helping other people to navigate their own transformational journeys. So the dots will always connect, even though you do not see that in that moment, but the dots will always connect. So just know, if you're someone who are navigating this journey at this moment of time, and again, I know it's hard, but just really know that there's a reason for it. And I know most often the things that are happening do not make sense, but there's always reason behind everything. So just know that. And I also know how hard it is. So remember to be patient. Remember to be kind to yourself. Have a supporting environment around you. I'm building my Pivoters Club community for that specific reason, because I didn't have anyone who was going through anything similar around me at that time. And I think especially more later in life, you're going through this, more isolating it is. I would say probably that mid-30s to 40s are the most pressured time, especially for women, to not have that marriage or kids. And I think especially that was like the hardest part for me, because everyone around me was ticking those boxes and I felt like I was left behind. But now I know I'm turning 40 in a few months' time. I definitely feel like my life is only starting. So you're not late in any way if you resonate with my story. And you're exactly where you need to be, even though it doesn't feel like it. And if you want to have support around you during this time, you can join my Pivoters Club community. I'm going to put the link below. And I'm sending so much love. I know it's hard. I really know it's hard. But as someone who's quote unquote on the other side, just know that there's so much more amazing things that you just cannot see at the moment that will be unfolding with everything that is happening in your life. And I always say the bigger purpose, the more challenging journey. So sending love, guys.